So my previous review obviously wasn't a No Time to Die review, but I promise this is real. Welcome back to Monopinions. Before we get started, I am sick, so I might not sound normal. Anyway, I don't know what kinds of expectations I had going into this movie. I mean, I naturally wanted to see a good movie, but I would have been fine if it was laughably bad. I'm happy to say that it was not the latter, though I was laughing quite a bit. The reason for my laughter swings back and forth between laughing with the film and laughing at the film, I think. No Time to Die definitely has some self-awareness with how ridiculous it can get, but at other moments when it is trying to be serious, I just found lines of dialogue or visuals to be pretty funny. This isn't entirely a bad thing. I would say more often than not I was laughing with the film, and this didn't take away from the important beats of the story either. This isn't to say that the movie is inherently a comedy, it just falls more in line with typical action movie tropes that we see nowadays. I will also say that because of the ridiculous one-liners, Bond fans may not appreciate the movie as much, especially after the new ground that Casino Royale broke with the Bond character. I don't consider myself a huge Bond fan though, so I appreciated the movie for what it was. Something to keep in mind going into No Time to Die is, unfortunately, the events of Spectre. That almost makes the viewing experience less enjoyable, knowing that such a bad movie has so much importance in No Time to Die. In fact, a large portion of the first act surrounds the continued presence of the Spectre organization before they're pretty unceremoniously killed off. We'll talk about that in a bit, but first I want to tackle the characters. Casino Royale did a lot to analyze and reinvent the character of James Bond. The films since then haven't taken those strides, and while there is something of an attempt in No Time to Die to do something new for Bond, it doesn't really work. It doesn't need to work for the movie to remain enjoyable, but it does leave something to be desired for Bond as a character. Undoubtedly, the film is more concerned with a proper send-off for Bond, but somehow it misses the mark. The themes of letting go permeate the narrative, from abandoning Madeline on the train, to Nomi taking over as the new 007, to Felix Leiter's death, to even a visit to Vesper Lynd's tomb, which was pretty surprising. And these are all fine story ideas, but they are not explored to the extent which I would have liked them to be explored, instead offering a surface level glimpse of potential. There's a spark of rivalry between Bond and Nomi, but it doesn't go anywhere and resolves itself because the plot needs it. Felix's death, considering the brotherhood that he and Bond apparently shared, feels like it should have had a much greater effect, but it's quickly forgotten about. And why are we revisiting Vesper when Bond was supposed to have let go of her already? It goes to show that to the filmmakers, the most important thing is doing justice to Bond's relationship with Madeleine Swann. Luckily, because it's the core of the story, I think it's done well, enough for Bond's eventual sacrifice to feel worthwhile. I wish there was more focus on these two, and on their kid for that matter, which would have made for a really interesting new plot element had it been utilized fully. The movie could have trimmed the fat with the other characters to give these two more screen time or development, but for what it had, it worked as well as it could have. I will say that even though Daniel Craig hates these movies, he was actually putting on a strong performance. I do think that went a long way to make his character feel good, because there was clear effort there. You know, the trailers for No Time to Die made Madeleine Swann out to be much more villainous than she was. She's just a good person throughout the movie who gets put through the ringer multiple times. She's never betrayed Bond, and any bad thing she might do in the movie is done under duress or out of self-defense. On the one hand, this is an interesting subversion of the expectations that the trailer set up. On the other hand, her character feels a lot more bland and flat than I would have liked. She cries quite a bit, screams a lot. I had hoped this Bond girl might break away from the trope, but instead she fell more into the trope than ever. Just another person for Bond to save. I'll just talk about the other two major characters. Nomi is disappointing and should have been given more to do. Yes, the film wants to focus on Bond because it is Daniel Craig's last outing as him, but I think it's important to contrast that with someone younger and potentially better than him, especially in the role of 007. Nomi would have been that opportunity to make Bond's send-off even stronger. She could have been someone Bond couldn't hope to match in skill at his age, but ultimately his sacrifice would define him as the hero and leave behind a strong legacy for Nomi to follow. Instead, Nomi feels cast aside the minute Bond returns to the limelight at MI6, tagging along rather than leading the way. I heard they might do a spin-off movie about Nomi, and I can only imagine what that might be like given the minimal character development she had in No Time to Die. More disappointing was the villain. Rami Malek isn't putting on a bad performance per se, but he's not given great material to work with. This villain, whose name is literally Lucifer Safin, is hilariously evil, and it's not quite clear why. His motivations never made sense to me. In fact, I don't think I even knew what his motivations were. I know he had some world-ending plan and that he liked poison. He had a garden of poisonous flora, but why did he want to inflict his wrath upon the world? I don't know. If Safin ever does say why he's doing what he's doing, I didn't catch it because of the accent that Rami Malek has put on. Safin does make an impression by nearly single-handedly taking down Spectre, but it's obvious that the film doesn't know what to do with Safin once Spectre is dead, because Safin's motivations prior to this was to destroy Spectre, since the organization had a hand in killing his family. And he ultimately accomplished his goal, but I guess that wasn't enough for a full movie, so the filmmakers just had him become another mustache-twirling, very eccentric guy who loves Japanese culture, apparently. These character criticisms make it sound like I hate the movie, but on the contrary, I really enjoyed it. Because for a series like Bond, you're not necessarily looking for strong character writing to have an engaging experience. That's really just the cherry on top. You just need great breakneck action, and I think No Time to Die delivers a solid mixture of that and heartfelt, slower character scenes. Surprisingly, for a 2-hour and 43-minute movie, this feels like a relatively fast-paced movie, and I think that's a remarkable accomplishment. This film in the action department seems to be at its best. The sequences are super polished with a great sense of movement. Bond isn't always performing high-octane stunts, and that's okay. Sometimes he's just mowing goons down with an assault rifle on the streets. It's just cool to watch. Combine this with Ana de Armas doing karate in a dress and you probably have one of my favorite action scenes in the movie. I thought the car chase leading into the forest scene was also pretty tense, especially due to the little girl being there. I'm also pretty sure that there was a one-take fight in a stairwell near the end of the film. That was really nail-biting, but I don't remember it quite as well because I'd swallowed wrong and was coughing. The plot is pretty full, but it doesn't feel super bloated, and it's easy to follow throughout each scene, up until the third act with Safin's bad guy plan, but even if you don't know what he's doing, you can still get a sense for the narrative. There are a lot of plot conveniences, I feel, but it almost feels par for the course for this genre. Nanobots that act as poisons seems a bit too far future for this movie, but I'll let it slide. One very strange example of convenience, though, is how Bond and Madeline are initially split apart. At the beginning of this movie, when Bond is visiting Vesper's tomb, the tomb explodes and Spectre agents swarm him. Bond immediately assumes Madeline betrayed him, but like I said, Madeline never did anything. This was Blofeld's plan to hurt Bond, and I don't know. I just don't really like that Blofeld continues to be behind the major events of Daniel Craig's Bond movies. Final word on Bond's sacrifice. I've heard that his death was divisive among fans, but I don't really see the problem. I think it's rather fitting for him to go out in a blaze of glory. The emotional weight it was able to pack into the moment made the sacrifice all the better. I like the eventual affirmation that it was indeed his kid who Madeline bore, and that she has his eyes. It was a tender scene for the calamity that was to come. I do think there could have been more following Bond's death. They just drink to him, and Madeline tells a story about him to their kid before credits roll. It's a very hasty last tribute by the characters, and it barely feels like his death has affected them greatly. I guess they can't show such feelings being MI6, but still it would have been nice. I still feel like I'm criticizing the film a lot. Maybe it's a more flawed film than I realized upon an initial watch, but thinking on these issues afterwards, it's not really affecting my view of No Time to Die. It's a solid action flick with sincere character moments and deserves the praise, I think. Quite frankly, it might be my favorite movie from 2021 so far. No Time to Die is a fitting bookend to this run of the character and is a satisfying close to his story.